The year was 2175. Earth's Armada, known as the Leviathan Fleet, had vanished from the galactic stage for over a decade. No one knew where they had gone or what had happened to them. For years, rumors of their disappearance spread across the galaxy until finally their silence ended. The fleet's return was swift and without warning. No messages, no threats, just the sudden, unmistakable presence of Earth's ships, massive and fearsome, reappearing in the galaxy's farthest corners. The galaxy had never forgotten the power of the Leviathan fleet. Earth's Armada was a force of destruction, unmatched in its firepower and ruthless tactics. But after years of peace, many had begun to think they were gone for good. Most had hoped they were, but as the fleet arrived again, it was clear that Earth's silence was not an absence of power, but a silence of warning. At first, there was no official announcement from Earth. No one knew if this was an invasion, a diplomatic mission, or something else entirely. Ships from various alien species, once thought to be invulnerable, began to report strange activity in distant systems, systems that Earth had once controlled, systems that had long since been abandoned. The Galactic Council, the central governing body of the galaxy, called an emergency meeting to address the new developments. Representatives from various species, including the well-known Solarians and the powerful Itera, filled the council chambers. They had heard the rumors, and now they feared the truth. "Something's out there," said one of the older Itera leaders, his voice filled with unease. "The Earth fleet is back. We need to understand why. We cannot let them regain their former power." "No one can." Other council members exchanged worried glances. The last time the Leviathan fleet had been active, it had left nothing but destruction in its wake. The galaxy had barely survived Earth's military might, and the scars of their earlier confrontations were still fresh in the memories of many species. Meanwhile, on Earth, the high command of the Leviathan fleet was silent. No transmissions were sent to the galactic leaders, no demands made. The humans, as always, operated differently. They preferred to let their actions speak louder than words. Back in the council chambers, the fear was palpable. For years, the galaxy had lived in relative peace, each species believing they had a handle on their own fate. But humanity's return shifted the balance in ways no one could have predicted. It was as if an old, sleeping giant had awakened, and no one knew how to deal with it. On the planet Hesperian, a quiet mining world on the edge of the galaxy, the first signs of Earth's fleet were seen. A fleet of colossal ships, moving with eerie precision, appeared in the system's outer reaches. Hesperian's defense forces scrambled to respond, but their efforts were futile. One by one, the ships in the system went dark, their communications cut off as if they had never existed. News of this mysterious disappearance spread quickly. The galaxy was on edge. There was no explanation, no sign of attack, just silence. The powerful Itera fleet, known for its invincible technology, sent scouts to investigate, but they too disappeared into the darkness. The Solarians, who had once ruled with unmatched technological superiority, now found themselves on alert. A shadow of doubt crept into their once unshakable confidence. No one had seen Earth's fleet in action for over a decade. But now, as they appeared once more, old memories resurfaced. They remembered the stories. The terrifying reputation of the human fleet, the one that had crushed entire fleets with ease, leaving nothing behind but ruin. In the depths of space, the Leviathan fleet moved silently, like ghosts in the void. No ship fired a single shot. No warning was issued. Their presence was a silent declaration. "We are back." It was a message the galaxy had hoped never to receive. The power of Earth's Armada was a myth to most, something whispered about in the corners of space and told in stories passed down over generations. But now, the truth was coming to light. The unknowns about Earth's return caused panic among the Galactic Council. Could they stand up to this force, this unstoppable machine? Or had they been lulled into a false sense of security by the passing years? In the heart of the council chambers, a decision was made. Earth's fleet must be stopped before they could reclaim their former power. But no one had a plan. No one knew how to face the Leviathan fleet. On Earth, the silence continued. No messages, no explanations, just the rumble of the Leviathan fleet moving toward its next destination. The galaxy had forgotten the true power of Earth's military might, and it was about to learn the hard way why the human's name was feared in every corner of space. The countdown had begun. The Lyterra system had once been a shining example of prosperity in the galaxy. Its cities were advanced, its people proud and strong. The Lyterra had long believed their technological superiority made them untouchable. But now, everything was changing. The sudden reappearance of Earth's Leviathan fleet had shaken the galaxy to its core, and the Lyterra were no exception. When the first reports of Earth's fleet reached the Lyterra capital, the government dismissed them as rumors. After all, how could a fleet that had been silent for so long suddenly emerge with such power? But as more reports came in, of entire fleets disappearing, systems falling silent, and the unmistakable presence of Earth's ships, panic began to spread. The Lyterra leaders could no longer ignore the threat. The Lyterra High Command called an emergency meeting, a rare and urgent gathering of their most powerful military leaders. The council chamber was filled with tension as the alien generals discussed their options. Everyone was worried. Even the Lyterra's most advanced warships, which had once been feared across the galaxy, had not returned from their last encounter with the human fleet. Earth's ships were out there somewhere, moving with a quiet, unstoppable force, and no one knew how to stop them. "Send scouts to investigate," one of the generals suggested, his voice tense. "We must confirm the reports. If the humans have returned, we need to know their strength." It was a dangerous move, but the generals agreed. They couldn't afford to ignore the possibility any longer. A small fleet of Lyterra warships was dispatched to the edge of their system to investigate the growing reports. They were met with nothing. The Lyterra ships vanished without a trace, leaving behind no wreckage, no communication, only silence. Fear gripped the Lyterra High Command. If their ships could not even report back, then what had happened? What could possibly be powerful enough to erase an entire fleet from existence without a single shot being fired? Back on Earth, the command fleet of the Leviathan fleet moved with deadly precision. Its ships were massive, their hulls gleaming in the darkness of space, yet there was no sign of their firepower. No explosions, no blasts of energy. They simply moved, and with every passing moment, they drew closer to the heart of the galaxy. Humanity's strategy was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were not attacking directly. Instead, they were cutting off trade routes, disabling communication networks, and silently crippling entire systems. It was a tactic of complete and utter isolation. The galaxy's power structures were slowly being brought to their knees without a single shot being fired. The Lyterra were only the first to feel the weight of humanity's return. The Lyterra High Command was desperate. A meeting was called with other galactic leaders, those who had once been Earth's enemies. The Xalarians, the Malkorians, and even the once neutral Xinthians all came together to discuss their options. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. Earth was coming for them, and they needed a plan. "We cannot fight this with conventional methods," one of the Xalarian commanders said, his voice cold and calculating. "We need something more, something that can match Earth's power." The Malkorians, known for their ruthlessness, agreed. They had heard rumors of Earth's advanced biological weapons, something that could turn the tide of war in an instant. For a moment, there was a sense of hope. The Malkorians offered their greatest weapon, a biological terror virus that could destroy entire populations and cripple military forces. The virus was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It could infiltrate a planet's ecosystem, turning its inhabitants into mindless, self-destructive creatures. It had been developed during a time when the galaxy was at war with Earth, but it had been lost, thought to be destroyed, wiped out by Earth's forces long ago. But now, the Malkorians were offering it as a last resort. "We need to act fast," the Malkorian general said, his eyes narrowing. "Earth's fleet is unstoppable. This virus could be the only way to bring them to their knees." The leaders agreed to the plan. If the virus could be delivered to Earth's home planet, it could weaken the human forces and give the galaxy a fighting chance. The Excelarians, with their superior technology, were tasked with developing a way to deploy the virus without detection. But even as the plan was set into motion, doubt lingered. No one knew how Earth's fleet had become so powerful or why they had returned. The rumors of humanity's power were just that, rumors, and no one had the full picture. The first move was made. A stealth mission was launched, with a fleet of Solarian ships carrying the biological weapon, ready to strike at the heart of Earth. It was a bold move, one that could either save the galaxy or doom it entirely. As the fleet moved toward Earth's territory, the tension between the species grew. Would the weapon be enough to stop Earth's unstoppable armada, or had the galaxy underestimated humanity's power once again? Back in the depths of space, the Leviathan fleet continued its silent march toward the galaxy's heart. Earth had not fired a single shot, yet its presence was felt everywhere. The galaxy was on edge, waiting for the inevitable clash. Earth's Armada had returned, and no one knew what to expect next. In the darkness of space, the Loitera, the Xalarians, and the rest of the galaxy braced for the final confrontation. Would Earth's power break them all, or would the galaxy find a way to stop the unstoppable? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy watched in fear and confusion as Earth's Leviathan fleet moved closer to the heart of galactic civilization. The fleets of alien species had been scrambling, trying to find some way to stop Earth's unstoppable force, but every plan they came up with seemed to fail. Some even began to wonder if Earth had developed some new, unimaginable weapon. But no one understood that the true power of the Leviathan fleet lay not in technology, but in something far older and far more terrifying. On Earth, an old man sat in a dimly lit room deep beneath the surface of the planet. His name was Admiral Randall, a retired officer of the Leviathan fleet. For years, he had kept silent, away from the spotlight, living in the shadows of the old conflicts. But as Earth's fleet began to make its move across the galaxy again, he knew it was time for the truth to come to light. Admiral Randall had been there during the early days of humanity's rise in space. He had fought in the wars that had made Earth the feared power it had become. He remembered the early battles, the struggles against invincible enemies, and the brutal strategies that had been used to survive. Humanity had not won their wars through numbers or technology alone. They had won by using strategies that were as old as war itself, tactics that other species found cruel and unsporting. But for humanity, those tactics had been necessary. While the rest of the galaxy believed humanity's strength was in their weapons, Admiral Randall knew better. The true strength of Earth's fleets was in their ability to adapt, to outthink, and to fight with a fierce desperation that no one could match. Earth's fleets had been forged in the fires of relentless wars, where every battle was a fight for survival. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their ships or guns, it was their unyielding will to win, no matter the cost. As Admiral Randall sat at his desk, surrounded by old war files and battle maps, he began to piece together the lost history of humanity's early space conflicts. The galaxy had never learned the truth about Earth's rise to power. They had never known the horrors humanity had faced in the early days, nor the dark decisions that had shaped the path they walked. The Admiral sifted through old records, finding reports of battles long forgotten. There, in the dusty files, he found something that would change everything. It was a detailed record of an ancient battle, one that had taken place on Earth's moon. A battle so brutal that it had been erased from the galaxy's collective memory. Earth had been under attack by a massive alien force, a species whose technology was far superior to anything Earth had at the time. Outnumbered and outgunned, humanity had been on the brink of defeat, but they did not surrender. Instead, they fought with every weapon they could imagine. Dirty tactics, ambushes, and guerrilla warfare. The alien force, confident in their own superiority, had underestimated humanity's will to survive. The battle on the moon had been a turning point. The alien invaders had been forced to retreat, humiliated and broken by humanity's unwillingness to give up. It was the first time the galaxy had witnessed Earth's ability to turn the tide of a losing war through sheer force of will. Admiral Randall knew that the true power of Earth's fleet lay in this history. The strategies, the tactics, and the mentality that had carried humanity through their darkest hours were still alive today. The Leviathan fleet was not simply a collection of powerful ships. It was the result of centuries of hard-won experience, of battles fought and won against impossible odds. As the Admiral stared at the old battle records, a grim smile crossed his face. He knew that the galaxy's reaction to Earth's return was not one of mere fear. It was one of confusion. The galaxy had never truly understood humanity's past. They had never seen what Earth was capable of when backed into a corner. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was in a state of disarray. The Terra, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, were on the verge of collapse. The Exilarians, who had once looked down on humanity as primitive, now found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. The Xinthians, always neutral, were starting to consider an alliance with Earth. No one knew how to respond to a force that seemed to have no weakness, no fear, and no mercy. In the shadows of Earth's government, a decision was made. The Admiral's records were shared with Earth's current fleet commanders. The history of humanity's early wars would now guide the strategies of the Leviathan fleet. Every move Earth's ships made from that point forward would be rooted in the brutal lessons learned from their past. As the news spread across the galaxy, a new fear began to take shape. The truth about Earth's past was a truth that no one had ever expected. The galaxy had thought Earth's power was limited to their advanced technology, but now they realized that the true power of Earth's fleet came from something much deeper. A centuries-old history of survival, a history of fighting against impossible odds, and a history of doing whatever it took to win. The galaxy had always feared Earth's power, but they had never truly understood it. Now they were about to learn why humanity's fleet was not to be underestimated. In the heart of Earth's Leviathan fleet, the commanders knew one thing above all else. They were ready. The galaxy would face humanity's full might, and it would be a reminder of why Earth's Armada was feared by everyone. Because humanity never, ever gave up. The galaxy trembled as Earth's Leviathan fleet continued its silent advance. The terrifying truth about humanity's history was now spreading through the ranks of the galactic powers. The once confident leaders of the alien species, who had dismissed Earth's Armada as a relic of a bygone era, were now realizing the magnitude of the threat they faced. No longer were they just facing powerful ships. They were facing a race forged in the fires of war, with tactics and strategies so brutal and unpredictable that no one could prepare for them. In the Terra system, their once mighty fleet was in a state of disarray. After losing several ships to the Leviathan fleet's sudden and devastating ambushes, the Terra High Command ordered a full-scale retreat to the core of their empire. They hoped that by gathering all their forces in one place, they could mount a defense strong enough to hold back Earth's unstoppable march. But deep down, they knew that if Earth wanted to destroy them, there was no place in the galaxy where they would be safe. On the outskirts of the Terra Empire, Admiral Kale, a seasoned commander of the Terra fleet, sat in his war room, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. His fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but it wasn't just the size of Earth's ships that worried him. It was their speed, their precision, and their ability to strike without warning. The Terra were used to overwhelming their enemies with force, but Earth's fleet didn't fight that way. They fought like shadows, appearing out of nowhere and vanishing before they could be countered. "The humans are not like the others," Admiral Kale muttered to himself, his eyes narrow with worry. "They don't fight for glory or power. They fight to survive." His words echoed in the room, and the other officers around the table grew silent. For the first time, the Terra were facing an enemy that didn't play by the usual rules of war. Earth's fleet was a force of nature, unstoppable and relentless. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the Leviathan fleet's commanders were preparing for their next move. They had no intention of slowing down. The Admiral's historical records were now guiding their strategy, every battle, every decision rooted in the deep lessons of humanity's past. The fleet had been designed for one purpose: to be ready for any scenario, any threat, no matter how large or small. The commanders knew they couldn't simply rely on firepower. They needed to outthink their enemies, use tactics that would catch them off guard and strike before they could react. Admiral Randall, now back at the helm, had one goal in mind: to make sure the galaxy would never forget the lesson humanity had taught during its darkest hours. Earth's fleet wasn't just about firepower. It was about understanding the enemy, knowing how to use every advantage, and most importantly, doing whatever it took to win. The next strike came without warning. The Terra fleet had gathered in what they thought was a secure position, surrounded by the best defenses their species could provide. They had fortified every entrance, ensuring no enemy could get through unnoticed. But Earth's fleet had anticipated this. Under the cover of a dense asteroid field, the Leviathan fleet emerged from the shadows. In perfect synchrony, the ships moved into position. No communication was sent. No formal attack was declared. The fleet simply arrived, as if it had been there the whole time. The Terra were caught completely off guard. The first wave of Earth's ships unleashed a torrent of fire on the outermost defenses, overwhelming them before they even had a chance to react. The Terra tried to respond, but their forces were disorganized, and many ships were already on the brink of destruction before they could make a counterattack. The Leviathan fleet didn't just destroy, it neutralized. Earth's ships moved with eerie precision, disabling enemy vessels one by one without causing unnecessary destruction. The Terra couldn't understand how they were being beaten. There was no direct assault, no overwhelming firepower. Instead, Earth's fleet seemed to be everywhere at once, outmaneuvering them at every turn. The battle was over before it even began. On the bridge of the lead ship, Admiral Randall watched the unfolding battle with grim satisfaction. This was how humanity fought. This was what made Earth's Armada so feared: the ability to strike swiftly, unpredictably, and without mercy. The Terra had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. "We've made our move," Randall said quietly to his officers. "Now we wait for them to make theirs." Elsewhere in the galaxy, the other species had begun to realize the gravity of the situation. The Excelarians, known for their quick reflexes and advanced technology, tried to organize a counteroffensive, but they were no match for Earth's ambush tactics. Ships disappeared without a trace, communication systems were scrambled, and Excelarians were left in chaos, unsure of how to respond. The Malkorians, who had initially suggested the biological weapon to stop Earth, were beginning to question their own plans. The virus was still being developed, but how could they trust it when Earth's fleet had proven to be so elusive and unpredictable? The galaxy had no idea what Earth was capable of, and the more they tried to fight back, the more they realized just how little they understood about their enemy. In the heart of Earth's fleet, Randall's mind was already focused on the next phase. Humanity had come prepared, and they weren't going to stop until they had reclaimed their place in the galaxy. The Leviathan fleet was more than just a military force. It was a message to every species that had ever doubted humanity's strength. The galaxy would soon learn that the true power of Earth's Armada wasn't in their ships or their weapons. It was in their ability to adapt, to fight, and to strike when their enemies least expected it. The Shadow Strike was just the beginning. Earth was back, and it was more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. As the Leviathan fleet continued its relentless march across the galaxy, the once proud and powerful alien fleets found themselves crumbling one by one. The Glaterra, the Xalarians, the Malkorians, none could stand against Earth's terrifying precision. Humanity's tactics, born from centuries of survival, were too unpredictable, too precise, and too brutal. And now, even the best military minds in the galaxy were beginning to feel the weight of impending defeat. In the Glaterra capital, High Command was in chaos. Their once invincible fleet had been shattered in just a matter of days. What was left of their forces had been scattered, leaving them with no clear way to fight back. Their greatest ships, designed to dominate the stars, were no match for the ghost-like attacks from Earth's fleet. Admiral Kale, who had once been so confident in his people's superiority, was now lost in despair. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't play by the rules? Kale muttered, standing before a holographic map of their shattered fleet. The Glaterra were a proud species, and this defeat was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The way Earth's ships moved, quietly, efficiently, without warning, had caught them completely off guard. They had never thought to prepare for such an enemy. As the Glaterra High Command discussed their options in desperation, the situation across the galaxy grew even more dire. The Xalarian fleets, which had once been considered the galaxy's fastest and most technologically advanced, had suffered similar losses. Earth's fleet didn't just destroy, it disabled, isolated, and dismantled. With every fleet Earth struck, they left behind not a trail of burning wreckage, but a web of confusion and fear. The Xalarian High Command was now convinced that conventional warships couldn't win against Earth. "We need to rethink everything," General Salin, the Xalarian Supreme Commander, said gravely. "Our weapons, our tactics, they're too predictable. We need something else, something to stop their silent attacks." But no one had an answer. The Xalarians, once so sure of their technological superiority, were now helpless in the face of Earth's eerie dominance. The galaxy's finest engineers and tacticians were now at a loss. No one knew how to counter the stealthy nature of Earth's Leviathan fleet. Meanwhile, the Malkorians, who had once believed their biological weapon could end humanity's threat, were now reconsidering their plans. It had seemed like the perfect solution: unleash a deadly virus on Earth's homeworld, crippling their forces and leaving them vulnerable. But now, with Earth's fleet moving so swiftly and unpredictably, the Malkorians were unsure if they could even launch such a weapon without being destroyed themselves. "We can't act rashly," General Thar, the Malkorian commander, said, pacing back and forth. "If we release the virus too soon, we could destroy ourselves in the process. We need time to prepare. And we need to know where the humans are, where they're going next. Without that, we're just shooting in the dark." The Malkorians were stuck in a deadly waiting game, hoping for a break in the chaos. But every day that passed, Earth's fleet drew closer to their final goal. No one knew what it was, but there were whispers among the galactic leaders, whispers that Earth was not just reclaiming territory, but preparing for something far more devastating. In the heart of Earth's fleet, Admiral Randall knew that time was running out. Their momentum was unstoppable, but even the best tactics couldn't guarantee success forever. Every strike they made weakened the galaxy's forces, but also drew attention. Earth's fleet had grown bolder, more daring, but Randall understood that the enemy wasn't going to give up easily. The galaxy would fight back, and when they did, Earth's forces would need to be ready. "We must press on," Randall said quietly to his officers, staring out at the stars. "The galaxy is realizing they can't stop us. They'll come at us with everything they've got soon enough. We have to be prepared for the fight of our lives." The human fleet had been ruthless, but Randall knew that what was coming next would be their biggest challenge yet. The galaxy's leaders had started to unite. Desperation was pushing them to act as one. There was talk of a new alliance, a force strong enough to match the Leviathan fleet. The rumors grew louder, and soon, Earth's fleet would find itself facing an unprecedented alliance of alien forces. As Randall looked at the map of the galaxy, his eyes narrowed. There were too many unknowns, too many risks. Earth had taken a great deal of territory, but the final victory wasn't guaranteed. The galaxy would soon learn that a single fleet, no matter how powerful, could never win the war alone. Humanity's resolve would be tested in ways they hadn't anticipated. Back on the Waitara homeworld, Admiral Kale stared out at the stars, contemplating what had been lost. The war that had once seemed so winnable was now slipping out of his people's hands, and he could feel the change in the air, the first signs of desperation. "No one is going to stop them," Kale said softly, his voice full of resignation. "Not unless we unite. But will we have the strength to do it before it's too late?" As the galaxy's leaders began to discuss the possibility of an alliance, Earth's fleet continued its march. They had taken the first steps, but the galaxy was far from defeated. There was still time for the alien powers to mount a counterattack. But for now, Earth had the upper hand. The Leviathan fleet was a symbol of humanity's strength and resilience, but no one could predict the coming storm, the storm that would decide the fate of the galaxy. And as the battle for the galaxy escalated, one truth became clear. Earth had once been underestimated, but no longer. The galaxy was on the edge of despair, and Earth's final move would decide everything. The galaxy was on edge. Earth's Leviathan fleet had crushed its enemies one by one, and now, the galaxy's greatest powers were forced to make an impossible decision. The quiet, methodical destruction of Earth's enemies had shown them just how dangerous humanity had become. No longer could the alien species ignore the threat. The time had come for them to unite. Admiral Kale, the broken Itera commander, watched as his people attempted to rebuild their fleet. They were not the mighty empire they once were. They had lost too many ships, and their morale was shattered. But their desperation was growing. Earth had taken too much, and the thought of letting them conquer the galaxy was unacceptable. They needed allies. They needed to form a coalition strong enough to stand against Earth's relentless advance. The Itera had already reached out to the Xalarians, the Malkorians, and even the Zynthians, who had always stayed neutral in galactic conflicts. For the first time in history, the galaxy's major powers began to hold secret meetings, trying to put aside their differences and create a united front against humanity's fleet. On the planet of Zarathos, the Xalarian Council was in session. General Salin stood before the council, his face grim. The once proud Salarian military had been humiliated by Earth's fleet. They had underestimated humanity's stealth, their tactics, and their ability to strike when least expected. The Xalarian forces had been forced into a desperate retreat, and now they had to face the truth. They could not fight Earth alone. "We cannot stand against them as we are," General Salin said, his voice steady but filled with frustration. "We must unite with the other species or we will fall, just as the Itera have." Across the room, representatives from the Malkorians and the Zynthians nodded in agreement. The Malkorians, once convinced their biological weapon would wipe out Earth, now realized they were running out of time. The Zynthians, neutral for so long, had been forced to acknowledge the reality of the situation. No one was safe. The Leviathan fleet was on a rampage, and if they didn't act soon, Earth would have control over the entire galaxy. A new alliance was born. The galaxy's greatest powers would now stand together against Earth. The Zynthians would lend their resources, the Xalarians their speed and technology, the Malkorians their biological weapons, and the Uitera their fleet. Together, they would fight back. But even as they planned their counteroffensive, they all knew the stakes had never been higher. Meanwhile, on Earth's side, Admiral Randall stood before the grand holographic map, analyzing the galaxy's movements. He knew that an alliance was forming, and the coming battle would be unlike anything humanity had faced before. But he wasn't worried. Earth had faced impossible odds before, and they had always found a way to win. "We've provoked them," Admiral Randall said quietly to his officers, "but they still don't understand what we're capable of. They think they can unite against us, but they're wrong. We'll take them down one by one, just as we've always done." His officers nodded, their faces grim but resolute. Randall knew that the time for small victories was over. The Alliance was a significant threat, but humanity had never been known for fighting fair. The Leviathan fleet would use every trick they had learned over centuries of warfare. Earth's history had always been about survival, and now it was about to enter its greatest test. As the new Alliance prepared its first strike, Randall made the decision to move ahead with a preemptive strike of his own. Earth's fleet would strike first, before the Alliance could fully unite. It was risky, but it was the only way to maintain the advantage. Earth's forces would move swiftly, catching the Alliance off guard and forcing them to fight on multiple fronts. The first target was the Xinthian border. The Xinthians had always been neutral, their resources untouched by the conflict until now. But their neutrality would no longer protect them. Randall's orders were clear: disrupt their defenses, cause confusion, and create a wedge between the Alliance's members. If Earth could fracture their unity, they could win without ever facing the full might of their combined forces. The Leviathan fleet moved out of hyperspace silently, as it always did. In a flash, their ships surrounded the Xinthian defense line, cutting off all communication between their outposts. The Xinthians, caught completely off guard, scrambled to defend themselves. But Earth's fleet was already on the move, its ships blending into the darkness of space, using tactics that no one had ever seen before. The Xinthian fleet was large, but they were not prepared for Earth's cunning. The Leviathan fleet struck in the dead of night, disabling Xinthian ships before they even had a chance to retaliate. The battle was swift, silent, and brutal. The Xinthians tried to counterattack, but they were too disoriented. Earth's fleet had already broken their communications, making it impossible for the Xinthian forces to coordinate. By the time the Xinthian High Command realized what was happening, it was already too late. The Leviathan fleet had destroyed their first line of defense and left their ships in disarray. Earth's message was clear: the Alliance would never be allowed to unify. The galaxy's leaders watched in horror as the Xinthian defenses crumbled. The first move in the war had been made. Earth had struck first, and the Alliance's plan was in chaos. Now they were forced to regroup, but the damage had already been done. The first sign of Earth's ruthlessness had shattered their unity. As Earth's Leviathan fleet moved on to its next target, Admiral Randall knew that this was only the beginning. The Alliance was forming, but so was Earth's resolve. The galaxy was on the brink of an all-out war, one that would reshape everything. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, a species that had been underestimated for far too long. The storm was gathering, and the galaxy would soon learn why Earth's Armada was feared even by the most powerful of alien species. The galaxy trembled under the weight of the war that was now in full swing. Earth's Leviathan fleet had delivered the first blow by shattering the Xinthian defenses. The galaxy's new alliance had been thrown into chaos, and now every species that had once underestimated humanity was learning the hard way just how far Earth was willing to go. The fight for the future of the galaxy had only just begun. Admiral Kale, the once proud Lytera commander, paced back and forth in the war room of his fleet's flagship. His people had been decimated, their pride broken by the silent and ruthless nature of Earth's strikes. Now, he was leading what remained of the Lytera in the struggle to regroup with the other members of the Alliance. The Lytera were determined to take back what had been lost, but Kale knew they were no longer in control. Earth had the advantage, and the Alliance was struggling to find a way to counter it. "What do we do now?" a young officer asked, his voice filled with doubt. Kale paused, staring out at the stars through the viewing window. The Leviathan fleet was already moving on to its next target, and he could sense that they were preparing for another devastating attack. It was clear to him that Earth wasn't just fighting for territory. They were fighting to teach the galaxy a lesson. "We regroup," Cale said firmly, though his words lacked conviction. "We meet with the others. We build a plan. And we strike back." But even as Cale spoke, he knew the alliance was fractured. The Xinthians were in disarray after the first attack, and the Xalarians were struggling to keep up with Earth's unpredictability. The Malkorians still had their biological weapon, but they weren't sure when or if it could be deployed. Earth's strategy had caught them all off guard. It wasn't just about strength or technology. It was about psychological warfare, about keeping their enemies in a constant state of fear and confusion. Back in the heart of Earth's fleet, Admiral Randall was watching the progress of the war with a cold, calculating gaze. The first strike had been successful, but he knew the true battle was yet to come. Earth's fleet was more than just a military force. It was a statement, a message to the galaxy that humanity would no longer be a minor player in the universe. It was a war of survival. "Our forces are advancing as planned," Randall said, addressing his officers. "The alliance is scattered, and they are confused. We need to keep applying pressure until they break." The room was silent. The officers knew the stakes. Earth had fought wars on its own planet, battles that had tested the resolve of its people time and time again. Now, the war for the galaxy was no different. The enemy was larger, more powerful, but Earth's resolve was unwavering. Humanity had always fought for survival, and they would do so now, on a galactic scale. "We will strike their strongest point next," Randall continued, tapping a button on his console. The holographic map of the galaxy shifted, zooming in on the location of the enemy fleet. "The Iterra will be our next target. Their fleet is the largest remaining, and it's isolated. This is our chance to deal them a decisive blow." As the Leviathan fleet set course for the Iterra system, Randall's thoughts turned to the Alliance. They were desperate. They would try to unite against Earth, but their weaknesses were already exposed. The galaxy's greatest powers couldn't stand against Earth's unyielding tactics. One by one, they would fall. Meanwhile, the Alliance was struggling to pull together. The Xinthians, still recovering from Earth's attack, were scrambling to coordinate with the Xalarians and Malkorians. The Iterra were beginning to regroup, but Cale knew it would take time. Time they didn't have. In the Xinthian capital, High Command was in chaos. The first strike had been a wake-up call, but now they had to face the reality that Earth was no longer a distant threat. It was at their doorstep. They had no choice but to prepare for an all-out assault. "We must act now," the Xinthian commander, Arvik, said urgently. "We cannot let Earth break through. If they destroy the Iterra fleet, we are next." But the Alliance was still not unified. The different species were hesitant, unsure of how to proceed. The Xalarians, known for their speed, were still recovering from Earth's ambush tactics. The Malkorians were holding back their biological weapon, unsure of how it would affect Earth's fleet. In the face of such uncertainty, the galaxy's response was fragmented, and that weakness was exactly what Earth needed. As the Leviathan fleet approached the Iterra system, Admiral Randall prepared for the final confrontation. His fleet was positioned to strike at the heart of the Iterra's last remaining stronghold. This battle would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Iterra fleet had no idea what was coming. As Earth's ships emerged from the shadows, the Iterra were still recovering from their earlier defeats, unable to mount an effective defense. The first wave of Earth's fleet descended with deadly precision, crippling the Iterra's outer defenses. The battle was swift and brutal. The Iterra attempted to regroup, but they were too slow. The Leviathan fleet was already inside their perimeter. Admiral Cale, standing on the bridge of his flagship, watched in horror as Earth's ships cut through his fleet. It wasn't just the firepower, they were everywhere at once. Earth's ships moved like shadows, appearing out of nowhere and vanishing before they could be targeted. In a final desperate move, Cale ordered his remaining ships to attempt a counterattack, but it was too late. Earth's fleet had already claimed victory. Admiral Randall watched from his command ship, the final strike against the Iterra complete. The Leviathan fleet had destroyed their fleet, and with it, the Alliance's most powerful defense. It was a moment of triumph for Earth, but it wasn't over. "We've done it," Randall said quietly, turning to his officers. "But the galaxy still doesn't understand. They still don't know the true meaning of humanity's resolve." The war was far from over. The galaxy had underestimated Earth before, and they had paid the price. But Earth was not finished. The final battle was still to come. And when it arrived, the galaxy would learn the true cost of underestimating humanity.